the time, and here we go. This is Allerton by Rachael Himsel. Scene 1, fade in, interior, Palmer House, night, 1894. The wealthiest members of Chicago society are gathered together in their finest attire for a ball. Orchestra plays as guests dance and mingle. Robert and Ilsa dance together.
Robert, I've always thought you were the finest dancer. You know, Robert, I've admired you for quite some time, and of course, I've respected you for your...
Money?
Robert!
My apologies, dear Ilsa, you were saying?
Well, I've always respected you for your kind heart and your interest in art and music. You're such a cultured gentleman, and I want you to know that I appreciate how cultured you are.
She looks at him longingly.
Well, thank you.
Awkward dancing continues in silence as Robert stares everywhere in the room except Ilsa's eyes.
And if you were to ever want to spend more time together, the two of us...
I'm sorry, pardon?
Oh, Robert, I'm simply wondering, it's been years since our commencement.
3 years, dear Ilsa.
But what do you plan to do with your life, Robert? Will you follow along in your father's business? Whenever shall you marry, have a family of your own?
I do believe a point of this whole affair is an elaborate device to deliver us all closer to the answers to at least some of the questions, my dear. However, in spite of this monumental effort on the part of my family, I must admit I'm not quite certain what the future holds for me, my dear. And what of you?
Well, of course I'll be married one day. I certainly don't wish to wind up an old maid like my sister.
We see her sister, a beautiful young woman, all of 24 years old.
Understandable.
And my strong, successful, smart husband and I will have a beautiful family.
She tightens her grip on the back of Robert's neck, tries to stare into his eyes, and the two continue to dance while Robert looks desperately about the room.
You're not a man of many words, are you, Robert?
Not especially.
The song ends and they both bow. Robert walks quickly away while she stares after him. He crosses to Frederick Clay Bartlett, who is still chatting with his dance partner. Robert jerks him by his elbow away from her.
Quite lovely to chat with you.
I am having the most dreadful night of my life, Frederick. I'd rather be reading Tolstoy.
That one was telling me about her incredible soprano range. Had you not rescued me, I fear she would be shrieking in my ear right now.
Oh, I wish we could leave this place.
You can't leave your own cotillion, Robert.
Cotillion I did not ask for nor desire, but this is not what I meant when I said I wish we could leave this place. I wish we could leave Chicago, leave America. I am beyond bored by the inspired women who can only talk about marriage. I cannot listen to my father discuss stock prices 1 more minute. I want to travel, Frederick. I want to see more of the world. And I want you to come with me.
Without question. When shall we go?
I'm being quite serious, Frederick.
As am I. Dear Robert, I feel I must tell you. You know that I had applied to the Munich Art Institute. I have been accepted.
Congratulations, my friend. And I must tell you, well, you know that I must tell you that I have also been accepted as well. And I hesitated to tell you for fear that you have not yet received word.
Only today, and here was I, worried to bother you at your own cotillion with talk of my future in Europe. But it is our future now, Robert, our future. We shall leave the security and luxury of our homes, and we shall venture out into the world to learn the techniques, the methods, the secrets of Europe's finest artists. We shall pledge our lives to the creation of beauty.
Robert grabs 2 glasses of champagne from a tray as they are being served, hands one to Frederick.
To the creation of beauty.
They toast, drink, laugh, and throw their arms around each other in excitement over their trip. Scene 2, 1894, interior Allerton home, library. Samuel Allerton sits and reads a book, smokes pipe. Agnes Allerton is reading the newspaper and drinking tea. Robert rushes in to talk to them, startles both of them.
Mother, Father, there is something important I must tell you.
Neither parent looks up from their reading. Really doesn't look up from their reading at all. Do we have Samuel, the father? Are we attached?
Just a second, Diane. I muted. I'll have to unmute.
Mhm.
Let's see. Wherever Frank is. There you are. Okay. Go. Take two, Frank.
Yes.
Mother, Father, there is something that I must tell you.
I do not have that in my script.
Oh, I just took it back a line.
Oh, you took it back. Sorry. Neither parent looks up from their reading.
Yes.
Well, it's rather difficult. That is, it's an important endeavor. It's an industrious endeavor, an honor, really. I feel that you would be honored to know. Not that I would presume to assume your feelings of being honored or not. I mean,
Agnes and Samuel are both now staring at their son as he begins toying with the items on his father's desk and finally sits down in a fit of anxiety in his father's chair behind the desk.
look, I simply mean to say, well, Father, you know, I greatly respect, I deeply respect that one day I must follow in your footsteps, but
Robert looks helplessly at his parents, pained to tell them of his dreams of pursuing a career in the arts. Agnes and Samuel seem slightly amused.
Robert, darling, are you trying to tell us that you would like to attend the Academy of the Arts in Munich?
how did, what? Yes, but how did you know?
I do speak often with Frederick's mother, darling. She's my friend, and I assumed I had already heard the news since you and Frederick found out 2 weeks ago. And I know that I can speak for both myself and your father in congratulating you on this accomplishment, my dear.
And
And we think you should seize the opportunity.
really, Father, I may study art with your permission, with your blessing.
Robert, you know I have never picked up a paintbrush in my life, and you've heard me sing. I sound like a hog being slaughtered on a Sunday. I will not pretend to understand art or music, but I do know what I like, and I like to see the paintings of lands I have never seen, and hear songs in languages I will never learn. And I respect the people on this earth who are blessed with the talent to sing and dance and draw and paint. You know that. I've always been proud of your talent, son.
Samuel gestures to his wall where several drawings of Robert's are framed and displayed.
I very much doubt that Da Vinci's mother discouraged his dreams of being an artist, or that Michelangelo's father told him to stick with masonry.
Oh, what pressure, my dear Father, what pressure. I very much doubt that I will be the next Michelangelo.
Oh, hush, Robert. The sky is the limit, my love. The sky is the limit. I have faith in you, and I know that no matter what the future holds for you, you will be the very best Robert that you can be, and that is all we expect of you.
Robert hugs his mother, then shakes his father's hand.
I know you will make us proud, son. I have always known that. And now you are giving us a great reason to plan a trip to Munich for your commencement.
They hug and laugh. Scene 3, montage of travels to Europe, 1894. Exterior, ship, day. Robert and Frederick stand on the bow of the ship watching as New York and the Statue of Liberty grow smaller in the distance. Interior, ship's bar, night. Robert and Frederick sit at the bar on the ship, chatting over drinks and listening to a jazz band. Interior, ship cabin, night. Robert and Frederick stroll to their cabin, laughing and leaning against each other as they both had quite a bit to drink, stumble into their cabin, clumsily bump into each other, lock gazes. Robert leans in, tempted to kiss Frederick, but then fakes a giant sway to show that he was just drunkenly falling toward Frederick, and both laugh uproariously. Blushing, Robert gets ready for bed, steals a glance at Frederick when he is not looking. Exterior, ship at harbor, day. Ship docks at harbor and Robert and Frederick get off, taking in the sights around them. Interior, restaurant in Munich, night. Robert and Frederick eat and drink beer in a festive restaurant, smoke cigars while a jovial accordion player performs a song at their table. Scene 4, interior, Academy der Bildenden Künste, Munich, never you mind, 1894.
Hello, new students. This class will either be completely excellent or completely terrible. It depends if you can truly hear, truly see, and truly feel. I can teach you how to paint, but I cannot teach you how to hear, see, and feel with truth and beauty. You must know yourself in order for that to happen. And if you do not know yourself, then you have no business making art, because art is about truth. Art is about honesty. There is no room in the world for dishonest artists. So if you do not know yourself, please leave now.
She looks around the room.
Later use of color.
As the professor continues talking, a beautiful black model comes out in a robe, drops it on the floor, reclines on a chaise lounge. Robert and Frederick stand at their easels next to each other and begin sketching her figure. The professor begins walking around the room and giving feedback to each student individually. As music plays, we see the progress of their paintings over several months. Then the music speeds up, and we see a montage of the class painting in the classroom out in the countryside, on the streets of Munich. We also see the model kissing the professor in her office. Robert walks in and quickly walks out, but smiles first, nods, and the two shrug and go back to kissing, shutting the door this time. Both Frederick and Robert improve in their technique, but Frederick shows great leaps and also develops a unique style. And we see the professor smiling and admiring his work often. Scene 5, interior, Alte Pinakothek Art Museum, day 1894. Robert and Frederick walk through the museum, animatedly discussing the work they see.
Robert, how many miles of museum must we have covered to date?
I haven't the faintest idea.
Miles and miles. 73 is my guess.
73? Really? And you came to this conclusion based on what evidence?
And still, each corner we turn, something new. Walk inside every door to a new museum and I sense a rush, a never-ending, wild excitement.
He stops in front of a painting by Michelangelo.
To think that men could conceive such things and actually bring them into being on a flat, bare canvas.
Robert stares at the accompanying booklet.
What is it?
Nothing.
Well, now I'm curious.
Well, it says here that Michelangelo's father was employed by the government for a short time and that he discouraged his son to be an artist.
Thank God for the rebelliousness of youth.
It says he found the life of an artist beneath their social standing. What does that even mean, Frederick?
When Michelangelo was a child, you were either a soldier or a builder or a winemaker or a drunk. We have quite a few more options now, Roberto.
I suppose so. What did your father say to you when you told him about Munich?
Very little. Thank you, baby Jesus.
He bows to a painting in which a smiling Jesus lies in a manger.
My father rarely speaks, though. My mother thought I should have this experience, so here I am.
What would the world be like without mothers?
Fairly certain there would be no world without mothers.
You know what I mean, Frederick.
Oh, Robert, are you missing your mom? Oh no, you really are missing your mother. And father, oh dear, him too. Robert, we're in one of the most beautiful cities in Europe, and we're learning about painting from a master. How can you be homesick?
I know, and I am grateful. Sometimes I'm so painfully aware of how grateful I should be to have been given this lot in life, to have been born into the Allerton family, to be the son of the amazing Samuel Allerton, who helped build Chicago into the first-rate city it is. What will I build, Frederick? What will I build? A place that people can walk into, something that people can see and feel. My father has built his fortune on livestock in the exchange. However, you cannot eat art, and art will not keep families warm at night.
Robert, you know what art does. We all know what art does. It unites us. Artists remind us that we are all connected. Artists show us how we are interrelated. We invite people to look at the same scene they have walked past 1,000 times and truly see it. Artists remind people to slow down, to enjoy the world around us, because the world is more than fighting for land and soldiering up and building the best army. We have to keep reminding people that life is beautiful. We have to. It's important work. It's as important as raising cows or building a house. It may even be more important. If we don't do our jobs, if we don't show people how beautiful life is, then what's the point of working toward peace? Why shouldn't we just burn it all down? Why should we care? It's the job of the artist. We remind everyone else to care.
But Michelangelo's father
was an ass.
All the visitors in the gallery turned to them.
That's right. Michelangelo's father was an ass, an idiot. He wouldn't have known great art if it bit him in the nose.
Robert is mortified, but laughs, and the two walk into the next gallery as a museum staff member crosses to them. Scene 5, interior of the Academy in Munich, day 1894. Critique. All student paintings are placed against a wall or hung up, and all the students plus the professor sit on one side of the room. They all look at the paintings quietly for several moments.
So.
Students look nervously at each other. Robert stares straight ahead at his own piece.
William, you found a way to follow the curve of the body in a non-realistic way without making it too childlike, like a cartoon. Frederick, your use of color in this section, it demonstrates that you truly understand the balance needed to make a piece successful. Bravo. Robert, your understanding of the shape of the muscles, it continues to improve.
Robert looks down, continues looking down during the rest of the critique.
Peter, I don't know what is happening here, but overall, your style leaves a strong impression. The emotion in this piece is clear, and it seems like you already know our model personally.
Small ripple of laughter. The professor's voice fades as we fade into Frederick and Robert, who are putting their artwork away after class and walking home.
Seems like Professor Schwenk was in a rather good disposition today.
Have we lost Robert?
You're muted, Robert.
Thank you.
Yay!
Perhaps towards you. I'm giving up. You've sold 4 paintings, and I, 0. I will never be as good as you.
Oh, Robert, stop comparing yourself to others. It's fruitless. You know that, especially when it comes to art. One must have the thickest of skin as an artist. The foundation of sharing one's art with the public lies in knowing that the public can be fickle and emotional and not at all discerning.
That sounds dreadful. Perhaps I'm just not cut out to be an artist.
Robert, don't say that, please. You live for art. You bathe in beauty. It's who you are.
Is it? Or perhaps I'm simply a tag-along. Perhaps you're the artist and I'm the arts lover, the patron. Perhaps I'm meant to exist as a patron of the arts. Call me Mr. Medici.
Robert, your work is wonderful. You have a real passion for your work.
Is passion enough?
You must have passion. As Professor Schwenk says, truth lies in passion, remember?
I believe many men have found that passion and lies go hand in hand.
Robert.
All right, I will continue, but only because I want to visit Paris and eat all the fresh baguettes I can eat until I either die from pleasure or heart failure.
Scene 6, Exterior Eiffel Tower, day 1896.
Robert, aren't you glad you joined me here in Paris?
Robert cannot speak as his mouth is full. He has a baguette in one hand and a croissant in the other.
I can see you are.
Frederick, I have died and gone to heaven. I just had the most delightful conversation with St. Peter. And do you know what he said? He said, eat more bread and cheese. And then Jesus himself put his arm around my shoulder and whispered, welcome to heaven, where everyone speaks French and people worship art and beauty and beautiful women bake delicious treats for you. Oh, and don't forget the chocolate. The chocolate here in heaven is the best.
Robert, I worry for you.
Don't. This is the happiest I've been in all my life.
But you're hardly practicing your painting and drawing skills outside the classroom.
It's okay. When we visited Rome, Jesus had a personal message for me. He said, relax, my child, and eat more food.
Robert.
Frederick.
Anyway, you're never going to catch the eye of a French woman if you keep eating like that.
Maybe I don't want to catch the eye of a French woman.
Oh, do you have your eye on the American girl in our class, Dora?
There's an American girl in our class?
Yes, Robert, you've met her several times, and several times you've pretended not to remember her or her name.
Well, perhaps she's just not that memorable. And Dora, what kind of a name is that? I never met a Dora before. It sounds like a type of fish. Oh, yes, I'll have the Dora tonight with a side of potatoes.
You're awful, Robert. What has gotten into you?
I think I'm in love with Paris.
Scene 7. Interior École Colline, school run by Louis Joseph Colline in Paris.
Mr. Allerton, I find your work to be appallingly bland. Utterly and appallingly bland. Did you spend any time working on this piece outside of class?
Robert says nothing.
I have seen more imagination come from my dog, and my dog is dying. I have seen greater use of color from my 4-year-old son. I am not moved. I am not impressed. You must put something of yourself into your work, Mr. Allerton. You cannot simply apply the paintbrush to the canvas and hope for the best. You have to say something. What are you trying to say, Mr. Allerton? What are you trying to say, Mr. Allerton? You have nothing to say? You wish to say nothing with your art? Then why are you here, please? Then why are you wasting my time?
He moves on to the next painting as Robert stares out the window and takes a bite out of a hunk of cheese. Scene 8. Interior boarding house room that Frederick and Robert share, 1896. Frederick and Robert have been discussing Professor Collins' critique of Robert's work. You're muted.
Sorry. Hello. Look, Robert, you know you could have spent more time on that assignment, but still, Professor Collins is a first-rate Grumbletonian. He shouldn't have spoken to you in such a manner.
It doesn't matter, Frederick. I've made up my mind. I'm going home.
You're going to leave me here?
You don't need me, Frederick. You have other friends. You have the fish.
Dora.
Right. You have Dora. You don't need me.
I do need you.
You do?
Of course I do. You're my dearest friend, my confidant. I want you to stay, Robert.
Frederick looks at Robert, and Robert sees the love that his friend has for him. Frederick pulls him into a long hug. Then as they pull apart, Robert looks deeply into Frederick's eyes and leans in to kiss him. Frederick instinctively kisses him back for a brief moment, then pulls quickly away, leaves the room, but not before Robert sees the shock and anger in his eyes. Scene 9. Interior boarding house, night, 1896. Paris is silent except for crickets chirping. Frederick lies in bed with his eyes open. Robert lies in bed with his eyes open, and a single tear falls down his face. We hear someone practicing a quilter piano piece in the distance. Scene 10. Interior, day, 1896. The next day at the school, Robert and Frederick do not speak as they work on their paintings and then walk from class to their house. Dora looks curiously at them but says nothing as both Robert and Frederick avoid eye contact with her. Scene 11, exterior boarding house yard, night, 1896. Robert carries his paintings out of his second-floor room, down the stairs across the yard and behind the tool shed, to the flattened hard ground where Monsieur Thibault burns the family's trash every week. He starts a small fire with some twigs. The knot in his throat has now moved down to his chest, and he feels with sickening certainty that he must add fuel to this fire. Robert drags a large branch over to the fire, the rough bark grating against his soft hands. He throws it on, and a single bead of sweat gathers on his brow, another, and soon the fire is raging. It's time. He takes the first painting in his now blackened hands. It is his first painting from Munich, the study of a nude man reclining on a chaise lounge. Robert takes a final look at the man's face. The eyes, which he could never get quite right, were set much farther apart than they were in reality, says a silent goodbye, and thrusts the painting into the flames. The fire dances upon the surface of the painting. Bubbles appear, and then the paint cracks. He can almost hear the canvas crying in pain, but he has become cold, indifferent. One bubble of paint begins to grow and then shrink like a heart beating. It is steady and predictable. The fire makes the paint grow and morph, the canvas pulling the paint back into itself, struggling in vain to keep the color contained. Then another bubble heart appears, beating just as furiously as the first, and another and another. The model's face becomes distorted through the flames, and Robert almost feels sorry for him. We hear the faint sound of Robert's heartbeat as it quickens with each painting thrown on the fire. This is the moment Robert decides to give up his childish dreams. He understands that he cannot, will never be an artist. One cannot be an artist simply because one loves art. Finally, the flames break through the canvas and the painting splits in two. Robert's heart splits also, aching for a way to save the painting, but knowing that it is not within his power. No amount of money can buy him talent. He takes the second painting into his hands, a landscape. The colors look dull, and the waning sunlight makes the hills of Germany look even more washed out than Robert had rendered them. He tosses it onto the fire without regret. We hear the sound of Frederick's footsteps as he approaches, mesmerized by the flame dance, thinking that this moment is the greatest artistic achievement of his life. Robert hears no footsteps, doesn't hear Frederick shouting his name until his friend is upon him. Frederick grabs him by his shoulders.
Robert, what have you done?
Robert says nothing, lost in the beauty of paint flames and the ashes floating about him like the first snow of the year.
What are you doing? Robert!
I'm giving up
What? Why?
because I'm not meant to be a painter.
How can you say that? You love painting. You have been painting longer than I. Robert, please don't be ridiculous.
Frederick walks quickly over to the remaining paintings, starts picking them up.
It is not ridiculous to recognize one's own shortcomings. It is necessary.
Robert, you've gone mad. Temporarily, I believe, but I cannot let you destroy your work. You spent so much time.
Time is not a measurement of talent, Frederick. The only measurement of talent is whether or not it moves the audience. And I have heard in quite clear language that my work moves no one. No one. And while I could certainly keep painting for myself, what's the point in that? Seems rather selfish, in fact, and a waste of my time. I want to uplift and enlighten people with my work, Frederick, and if I cannot do that through my artwork, then I shall find another way to do so.
Robert walks over to his paintings and picks up a self-portrait. He gazes at it for quite a while and takes one step toward the fire. Frederick grabs Robert by the arm.
Don't.
Robert pulls his arm quickly away from Frederick and starts toward the fire again.
Please, don't.
Frederick now grabs Robert with great force and pulls him away from the fire. Frederick is larger and naturally stronger, but Robert has a mission. The two friends struggle for what seems like hours, but is just minutes. Frederick begins crying as they dance this uncivilized fire dance, fearing that his dear Robert is lost to him. Robert remains resolute, silently fighting back, intent on destroying what he once loved. The frame splits as they struggle, and Robert's pained face becomes stretched and pulled in two different directions. Frederick lets the painting drop with a sad and exhausted sigh. Panting, hands on his knees, Frederick watches as Robert flings the painting onto the now roaring fire. Robert picks up another canvas, this one covered in impressionistic red poppies, and tosses it on as well. Frederick stands and watches, tears silently streaming down his face. Robert tosses another and another onto the conflagration, and then another and another. Robert pulls a portrait of Frederick from the pile and holds it out to his friend. Frederick accepts it, gazes at it, holds it to his body. The two friends watch as Robert's portfolio of paintings light up the now dark Parisian sky. The fingers of fire reach higher than either one of the young men stand. Frederick can't bring himself to look at Robert. The ashes fly high in the air and lead the eye to an illumined Eiffel Tower. Throughout the remainder of the film, Robert is seen doodling on papers, but when someone sees him doing it, he either hides his drawing or crumples the paper and tosses it in the trash. Scene 12. Interior, Allerton home, evening, 1897. Robert comes home and father gives him land in Illinois. Robert lies on a lounger reading. Agnes and Samuel are reading in chairs by a fire. Agnes looks up from her book at Robert, then back to the book, then looks over at Samuel, who glances at her, smiles quickly, goes back to his book. Agnes returns to her book, then snaps it shut, looks over at Samuel again, who does not look up at her.
Samuel, when do you plan to tell Robert about our gift to him?
When I grow tired of his presence here.
Robert and Agnes look sharply at Samuel, who laughs heartily.
What can I say, Agnes? The prodigal son hath returned home, and I enjoy hearing his stories and having his help with the business.
I can't say that I'm that much help, Father.
Hogwash. You're just as smart as I am when it comes to business, Robert. You just have to trust your instincts. And that is why...
Your father and I want you to have your own property.
You're throwing me out?
No, no, sweet Robert, no. But we want you to have a place of your own, a private place.
I have set aside land for you down in Monticello, you know, near the new university.
You're sending me to live among corn and beans and hogs and university students?
Robert, we thought you'd be thrilled at the prospect.
Chicago is my home. There's theater and music and art here.
My dear, I know you will find art wherever you go. And if you do not find it, you shall make it.
Mother, my days of making art are behind me. I've told you that, and I apologize once again for wasting not only your time, but your money. I never should have gone to Europe. I never should have gone to Europe.
Robert, calm down, my love. We want you to be happy. If you want to stay here in Chicago with us, stay here. But know that you have a place to go where you can make your own home should you desire. Yes, Chicago is full of theater and music and art, but it's also full of violence and crime. University towns like Champaign are full of thinkers like you, full of academics. We thought you would jump at the chance to be amongst intellectuals such as yourself.
Do you really think I'll find more intelligent folk in the middle of the cornfields than right here in one of America's largest cities?
Why don't you and your mother make a trip to Monticello? Walk the land. See what you think.
Robert snorts, leaves the room while shaking his head. Scene 13, exterior, train station, Monticello, Illinois, 1897. Robert and Agnes step off the train in Monticello. Jim is waiting for them and helps them into the car, drives them to hotel. During the ride,
Driver, how long have you lived here?
Devin, can you read that Jim? I think our actor isn't here.
I was born and raised here, ma'am.
And what's your name, if I may ask?
Jim Steingarten.
Ah, quite a few Germans in these parts?
Yeah, sure. And what brings you folks to town, if I may ask?
Business and pleasure. We've recently purchased some farmland and we are hoping that Robert here will oversee the operations.
Because apparently profit is not important to my parents, for I have not overseen a garden, let alone hundreds of acres.
Hundreds of acres?
Yes, over in Piatt County.
Wait, are you the Allerton family?
Yes, I am Agnes Allerton, and this is my son, Robert.
Oh, I know you. Well, I've heard all about you. We've all heard about you, and how Mr. Samuel Allerton pulled himself up by his bootstraps and turned a dollar bill into 100. I mean, it's a pleasure to meet you, ma'am, sir.
Lovely to meet you, Jim.
If you inherited your father's business sense, Mr. Allerton, I'm certain you will make a fine profit off this land. You're sitting on some of the richest farmland in all of Illinois. Now, if you need someone to help you work that land, to advise you, I'm your man.
Thank you kindly. I will keep that in mind.
they arrive at the hotel and Jim helps them out, pulls the luggage.
Jim, since you know the area so well, would you mind driving us tomorrow over to the farms?
Not at all, Mrs. Allerton. Happy to. See you at 8 a.m.?
That seems a bit extreme. Let's say 9 or 10.
Whatever you prefer, sir. I'll let my wife know I won't make church.
Oh, we don't want to keep you from church, though, so perhaps...
Ma'am, respectfully, have you ever been to a Presbyterian service?
Agnes shakes her head no.
Let's just say I converted for my wife, and if I didn't love that woman with all my soul, I'd be unconverting faster than you can whistle Dixie. I will be here at 9 o'clock a.m. tomorrow with bells on, but you can take your time. I'll wait right here.
Thank you, Jim. Now, see, Robert, there are funny, smart people in these here cornfields.
Scene 14, next day, exterior of the farms, morning. It's all woods and meadows, 1897. Jim drives as far as he can on a dirt road, then continues onto a grassy path until the weeds become too high. They get out in the clearing, Robert and Agnes take in the beauty of it, the size of it.
All this?
All this. What do you think of the house here with the reflecting pool behind it over there?
And the sunken gardens, perhaps a vineyard.
And perhaps you'll find a cultured young woman here who shares your love of the land and the arts.
I love it here. The land, untouched, beautiful as it is, yet full of potential. Thank you, Mother. Thank you so very much.
Scene 15, interior of the chapel in Upper State, New York, day 1898. Frederick marries Dora Tripp. Robert is best man. Frederick stands at the altar, nervously looking toward the doors at the back of the church, to Robert beside him, back to the doors. The doors are thrown open, the bridesmaids enter, then Dora. Dora walks down the aisle and Frederick beams. As all eyes are on Dora, Robert stares at Frederick. Ellen Gertrude Bay Emmett is in attendance and she smiles as she watches Dora, then glances over to Robert, who she notices is staring at Frederick. She returns her attention to Dora, but steals a couple more looks at Robert throughout the wedding. The minister begins speaking and Robert turns his attention to the ceremony. At one point, Robert glances at Dora and their eyes meet. She smiles and he immediately smiles back at her.
I, Frederick, take thee, Dora, to be my lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer, till death do us part.
Robert watches as much as he can bear, and then looks up at a stained glass window that shows the dove of Christ, wishes he could fly like a dove too. Suddenly bells ring loudly and wedding goers smile and applaud. After only slight hesitation, Robert joins them. He glances over at a woman, Bay, who smiles at him. There's something intriguing about her confidence, and Robert smiles back. The wedding party and attendees exit. Scene 16, interior, party hall, wedding reception, 1898. Most couples are dancing. Dora and Frederick are happily laughing and chatting with guests. Robert sits with his parents.
Robert, darling, there will be dancing now. I observe approximately a dozen single young women in this room at this point in time. And every single one of those single women have looked hopefully in your direction, no less than 5 times each. Please, please remove the mystery and put 11 of those women out of their misery by asking just one of them to dance.
But suppose I put the 12th woman in even greater misery when I step on her toes.
Robert Allerton, I taught you how to dance in our dining room. You cannot pull that horse shit on me.
Now look what you've done. You made your mother say horse shit.
They all laugh, and Samuel takes his wife's hand and they move to the dance floor together. Robert sits for a while, watching his parents dance happily together, and then notices that one by one, the single women in the room are craning their necks to smile, lick their lips, or nod in his direction.
Damn vultures.
Robert looks around, spots Bay, who is talking animatedly to her grandfather, who is straining to hear her. Robert crosses to her.
I don't believe we've met.
We haven't.
I'm Robert Allerton.
I'm Ellen Gertrude Emmett, but my friends call me Bay.
Why is that?
We're not friends yet. When we are, I shall tell you. Would you like to dance?
Robert is taken aback, but nods in agreement. She takes his hand and leads him to the dance floor. She is an excellent dancer, and she and Robert soon gain attention from others on the dance floor who are impressed by how light she is on her feet, her smile, her laughter, and confidence. Robert is smitten. At the end of the night, Bay and Robert sit at a table alone, looking at each other over the candlelight, drinking wine. After most guests have gone, they are talking when Frederick and Dora walk over to them.
Oh, Bay, I see you've met our dear Robert. Robert was selected as the most eligible bachelor in Chicago Allerton, you know.
I did not know.
According to the Chicago Tribune, no less. I knew you two would get along swimmingly. Didn't I tell you, Freddie, that Bay and Robert would get along swimmingly?
You did.
But wait a moment. If one is voted most eligible bachelor, what does that mean? Does that not imply that Robert is somewhat of a ladies' man?
Ladies, man.
I, very drunk, has just walked by and heard only the last sentence.
Ladies, man. Robert? No. More like lady, man.
Eli, I believe you've had quite enough to drink. Go find your wife.
Eli stumbles away.
I can assure you, I've known Robert since we were young, and he is neither a lady man nor a ladies' man. He is shy, if anything, and that can be off-putting to some women. But perhaps an intellectual, confident type of woman such as yourself can figure out the way to crack ye old Allerton code.
The group laughs.
Robert, we're off to our honeymoon. Thank you for standing up with me today. It meant the world to us.
Robert and Frederick hug, while Dora gives Bay a hug and a kiss goodbye. Then Dora pulls Robert into a long hug while Frederick gives Bay a quick hug and a kiss goodbye.
We are family now, Robert. I know you love my husband like a brother, so that makes you my brother now too. I love you and I forgive you for comparing me to a fish.
Dora laughs as Robert registers his shock.
Frederick.
Frederick and Dora are already starting to walk away hand in hand.
No secrets in love and marriage, old man. No secrets.
As Bay looks confusedly at Robert, Samuel and Agnes walk over, tired and happy.
Robert will be driving back to the inn now. Would you like to ride with us?
Robert looks at Bay.
I rode with my grandfather, and he's apparently gone already. I know he is getting forgetful, but I didn't expect him to forget me. I suppose I should find my way back to the inn myself.
Well, we can certainly take you along. Father, Mother, this is Ellen Emmett. Ellen, this is my mother, Agnes, and my father, Sam.
Pleased to meet you both. I've heard wonderful things about you from your son.
The four walk to the car, and once Robert and Bay are settled into the back seat, she casually lays her hand upon his knee when she laughs at something he says, and he looks into her eyes, places his hand upon hers. They both smile. Scene 17, interior, Bay's home in New York. Bay and Robert are talking earnestly.
Robert, you can keep all the digas you want. I am telling you, Henry is onto something stupendous.
My dear Bay, you must know that you cannot simply roll out phrases like something stupendous without being questioned. What makes it stupendous? What exactly do you mean by stupendous?
Robert, you've seen his work. You know what I mean. No one is doing what he's doing.
The same could be said of my young nephew, who makes scrawls in his coloring book, my dear.
The phone rings. Bay answers.
Robert, it's your mother. She says your father isn't well.
Scene 18, interior, Samuel Allerton bedroom. Samuel is lying in bed, looking chipper.
Robert, come in, son, come in.
I came as quickly as I could. Mr. Rockefeller flew me in himself on one of his new planes.
I told your mother not to call. I'm fine.
You are not fine. The doctor said you almost died.
Almost being the operative word. That was ages ago.
Then was 8 hours ago, Robert.
What happened?
Well...
What happened is that he didn't listen to the doctor and he isn't sleeping. He just works. I beg him to come to bed, and even when he does, he sits up and reads newspapers from all across the country, all over the world sometimes.
A man has the right to stay informed.
He motions Robert to come closer, pats him on the back.
I have a more pressing matter, Robert. Are you going to make that poor girl wait forever?
Father, you know I adore Bay. She's beautiful and thoughtful, intelligent, and talented. We are certainly well suited for each other.
So?
Yet, I feel something is missing. Is missing. How did you know you wanted to spend your life with Mother?
Robert, you simply know. There is something irresistible about her. She can confound you, but you love her still. You think of her as you look out the window. You dream on her of days of sunshine. You dream of her on rainy days, cloudy days too. You simply must be near her. You are drawn to each other.
And if these thoughts should be fleeting?
Then she likely isn't the one for you, which would be a shame because I too adore Sweet Bay. But you should be happy with your life mate. Robert, do not settle down to make me happy. Do not settle down to make someone else happy. When you find the one you truly love, you will not know hesitation.
I fear I may hesitate with anyone. I fear I will never find the love that I see between you and Mother.
You will one day, my boy. You will. You and I know that in my heart of hearts.
Scene 19, interior, cathedral in London, night, fall, 1911. A small group of friends have gathered for a concert of Roger Quilter's newest songs. Henry James, Florence Kohler, Wilfred Deglin, Bay, Robert, and Roger stand at the back of the cathedral as the others file in.
And Robert, this is Roger.
Pardon?
Roger.
Robert leans in closer with his good ear.
Roger. My music performed tonight.
And we're spending the weekend at Roger's beautiful cottage. I told you this, darling.
My apologies. I lost my hearing in this ear as a child.
Not at all, dear Robert. I shall make certain you have an excellent seat for the concert.
He steps between Bay and Robert, links arms with both, walks down the aisle to the front row, situates Robert so he has his good ear closest to the singers. The rest of their friends fill in beside them. The chemistry between Robert and Roger is palpable. As Robert listens, he leans closer to Roger, away from Bay. Roger steals glances at Robert, smiles at one point. He inches his hand on his knee so it is resting by and barely touching Robert's hand. Robert does not move his hand, begins sweating just a bit as the music swells. End of the concert, during the applause, Robert looks Roger in the eye and smiles warmly. Scene 20, interior, Roger's home, later that night. The group of friends sit and drink, smoke. Bay paints a quick sketch of the friends lounging about, glances often at Roger and Robert, who are sitting close to each other on a chaise lounge.
It's been a long day and I must be to bed.
She leans over and gives Robert a light kiss on the cheek. Then Roger hugs two others as she bids them farewell. Henry says, I suppose we must take our leave as well. After everyone has left, Roger and Robert sit near each other, each holding a drink, looking into each other's eyes.
I'm so glad that Bay has brought us together.
Yes, she is a wonderful woman, isn't she?
So, when is the wedding?
Wedding? Yes, wedding. We have yet to select a date. We both travel so much, and her career as a painter is finally taking off. And I so want to just support her in her endeavors.
Most men couldn't wait to marry, well, to consummate their marriage. Is that a blush, Robert? How is it that a lowly musician such as myself could make the great Robert Allerton blush?
Robert looks away. Roger puts down his glass, takes Robert's glass from him and puts it down.
I want you to clasp your hands together like this.
Roger clasps hands and Robert does the same.
Now, try to pull them apart.
Robert tries. They remain clasped.
You can't pull your hands apart because you're fighting against yourself. You can fight against yourself all you want, but you'll never win.
Robert keeps trying.
Your right hand will never trick your left hand into giving up, and you can't trick yourself into loving someone if you don't. You can't fight your nature.
Robert drops his hands slowly.
What do you know of my nature?
More than you might know.
He takes Robert's hand, holds it against his heart, caresses Robert's face. Robert is surprised for an instant, then becomes completely relaxed. They embrace, then kiss. Bay walks into the room to retrieve her glasses, and they do not notice her. She quickly looks away, runs up the stairs. Scene 21. Interior, Roger's dining room. Exterior, patio next morning. Robert, Roger, and Bay are eating breakfast silently together. Bay finally pushes her plate away.
Well, I feel like a stroll. Do you feel like a stroll, Robert? I feel like a stroll.
Can the stroll wait until after breakfast, dear?
No, it cannot, my dear.
Roger and Robert exchange a quick look. Robert stands and walks with Bay onto Roger's garden patio, and she closes the doors. Bay slips her engagement ring off of her finger, hands it to Robert with tears in her eyes.
Bay?
I saw you last night.
Robert is speechless. They stand in silence for some time. Finally,
Do you despise me?
I could never, never despise you, Robert.
Do you pity me then?
he breaks down crying. She goes to him and holds him.
Yes, I do, Robert. I do pity you. For this world is a hard place for people like you, but I also have faith in you, Robert, in your resilience.
But I do love you, Bay. I do.
I know, and I adore you, Robert.
Perhaps we can
No,
maybe.
no, Robert. I will never have your heart. I know that now. I suspected it before, but I held out hope. That hope has perished now.
I am so sorry, my sweet Ellen. So sorry. I didn't.
I have to go now. I will not speak of this to anyone, Robert. I shall simply say the engagement is off. This is no one's business but ours.
Thank you, Bay. Thank you.
Roger is a good man. He is fragile, though, Robert. He may not seem it, but he is.
She walks inside to Roger, gives him a warm embrace.
Dearest Roger, thank you so much for your hospitality. Be well, my friend, and take good care of Robert.
Roger stares at her, speechless. She pats him on the cheek, smiles, and walks to the door where her suitcase is packed, walks out without looking back.
Farewell, Bay, and thank you. Thank you, Bay.
Scene 22, montage. Robert and Roger walking along the Thames, at a play, picnicking in a secluded woods, kissing. Roger's music plays during the montage. Scene 23, interior, Roger's home, night. Robert and Roger sit at the piano together, and Roger plays for Robert. Robert is smiling, truly in love for the first time in his life. He knows he must leave to tend to business back in the States, but he wants to stay.
If only you could stay just for another day.
I would, but I could.
Oh, you could.
I will be back, or you will come visit me. We will see each other again, my love. I'm certain of it. Won't you come visit me on the farm? You would adore how peaceful it is there.
Tell me again about this peaceful, idyllic spot in the middle of corn, hogs, cows, crows, chickens, and hayseeds?
Hey, do not talk about my neighbors like that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have said your red-necked farmer friends who think we are freaks of nature and should be castrated with the same tools they use on their livestock. My apologies. Pardon me.
They're not all like that, Roger, sincerely. I mean, there still are fears and such, but they're also good people. You'd love Mrs. Ernst.
Well, perhaps. That is all I can offer you, my dear. The journey to America can be treacherous, and my life is here, Robert. My music, my friends.
And me?
You are a great friend, a darling friend. Of course you're more than a friend. If it's meant to be, it will be.
Fade out as Roger plays piano. Scene 24, interior, the mansion in Monticello, day / interior, Roger's home at night. Robert is home in Monticello. He paces the room holding a letter from Roger in his hand, reading it, devouring it, savoring it. Darling Robert, it says at the top, how I miss you. He smiles broadly, looks out his window, sits hurriedly at a desk and writes passionately, furiously. The first lines of this love letter appear on the screen in inky print as if floating across water, and then fade to Roger, sitting at his piano with this letter in his hand, tears silently streaming down his face as we hear Robert's voice, which fades in and out with the words intermittently sprawled across the screen against the ocean water.
Dearest Roger, when I came in last night, I found your first letter. Life has been very different since. I never dreamt I could so madly long to hear from anyone before. How I wish you were here to hear all the good music and go to the funny balls. We went to one last night and feel quite jaded this morning from so much dancing. Susan Metcalf has a concert here tomorrow night, and we are going, of course. It is the most beautiful weather, warm and sunny like spring. Do write me what your one-act opera is going to be about. I love your music, dear Roger, and all that I've heard. It's so heavenly. To think of all the nice things you are going to compose next summer at the farms. What a divine time we will have together by ourselves, riding over the farm, taking long walks with the dogs. You will like it. I haven't a doubt you will like it. There won't be any of these beastly separations. What hell they are. Think what a beautiful time we might be having together now. But I must not complain. It's so wonderful to have found you, and we have a long life ahead. Life is so much nicer now that we are friends, and so much more besides, even though we are apart. You blessed, oh darling. I do so love you, Roger. Everybody knows you must, but no one can as much as I. Your devoted Robert.
Scene 25, interior, the Olympic, a ship heading to Southampton, day, January 24th, 1912. Robert John Jacob Astor and his wife, Madeline Talmadge Force, walk out onto the deck of the Olympic. The shore of Southampton can be seen in the distance. John cannot keep his hands off his young wife. Giggles adoringly.
Look, look, we are nearly there.
Yes, my love.
They passionately kiss and Robert looks away.
I'm so sorry, Robert. She's simply ravishing, though, isn't she? Ravishing? Oh, but I'm sorry. It seems you are having difficulty finding a woman of your liking. Robert?
I like many, in fact.
Robert, there are some silly rumors about you currently, that you don't like women at all, that you prefer the company of...
Robert laughs and John joins him.
Madeline, my dear, if we men were to be perfectly honest, we would all admit that we much prefer the simple, uncomplicated company of men. Right, Robert?
I have found that men can be just as complicated as women. We aren't really so different, men and women. At least not as different as the world would have us believe.
Well, I hope that you find a simply wonderful British woman on this visit, Robert. Bring her home and show her all the sights Chicago has to offer. I know you will be such a good father, Robert. I just know this about you. And your little one will be best friends with our little one. Oh, no, not yet, silly. We've only just been married. But I want to have a house full of children, and so does Johnny. Isn't that right, my sweet?
John nods, but rolls his eyes toward Robert when she turns away.
Oh, we're almost there. Perhaps another hour or so, right, darling? Oh, Robert, what will you do first on this visit to London?
First, I will be checking in with an old friend, and then I have a rather serious meeting with a lovely woman named Florence.
Ooh, tell us more about Florence.
Well, she is actually involved with someone, so my visit is purely professional. She is a talented jeweler by trade, and I am in the market for some gifts.
Ah, her loss. When then do you plan to return to the States, Robert?
I'm not certain, though I am considering buying a ticket on the Titanic's maiden voyage. The Ryersons will be taking that trip for certain.
Oh, John, I told you we should purchase tickets for our return. All of our friends will be on this ship.
Let's see how this journey falls out, my love. I'm not sure how long business meetings will take. There's still time to purchase tickets.
The blast of the ship's horn startles the three and they head inside to gather their wraps. Scene 26, exterior, docks of London. Sailors steady the Olympic in her dock as passengers disembark. John, Madeline, and Robert disembark with others from the ship. Robert smiles, waves farewell to the Astors, sees Roger standing against a car, waiting for him. The two grin, hug each other. Noticing that the Astors are watching him, Robert hurries into the car. Once inside the car, Roger places his hand on Robert's knee, hungrily leans in to kiss him. Robert pulls sharply away.
Stuart, please stop at Townhill Park. I wish to show Robert the roses before the sun sets.
The car pulls over and has barely stopped, and the two lovers jump out and rush toward a secluded spot near the roses. Robert and Roger are drawn together like magnets, kissing and holding each other.
I missed you so. Why wouldn't you visit?
I couldn't.
You could, but I couldn't wait a moment longer. I needed to see you, to feel you, to hold you.
Roger kisses him, slips his hand under his jacket, undoes his tie quickly. Robert undoes his own belt, then moves on to Roger's. The two make love on the ground, quickly and quietly, knowing that the driver is waiting and anyone could walk by. As they lie breathless on the ground just for a moment, staring up at the sunset and the trees over them, they both smile at the same time, turn to each other.
I love you.
I love you.
They continue staring into each other's eyes.
We must get back to the car.
They quickly put their clothes on, smooth their hair, smooth each other's clothes, and walk back to the car. Scene 27, interior, Roger's home, day, April 2nd, 1912. Robert is packed and ready to walk out the door, holding 2 tickets for the Titanic in his hand. Slips them in his front pocket and moves his suitcase from the bedroom to the front door. Roger plays a stormy, passionate melody on the piano. Robert stands and watches him for a moment.
You haven't packed, Roger, and we must leave within the hour.
Oh, please, why don't you stay?
My family is in America. My life is in America. You know Father isn't well, and I must tend to the business of running the farms. I love you, Roger. I want to be with you,
Well, then stay with me.
But I've been here for 3 months, my darling. Come with me.
You know I can't.
Yes, you can. I know you were frightened, my darling Roger. I know, but I will take care of you.
How will you take care of me when someone finds out about us? How will you shield me from the blows?
My family. We have friends. We can live together and be happy.
In America? Ha! The United States of Barbaria. You don't even serve tea properly in America.
Roger, you're behaving like a child.
Is it so childish to want to live? To stay alive? Is it childish to want to feel safe as I walk down the street with the man I love? To not feel threatened? I don't feel threatened here, Robert. I don't.
He begins to cry. Robert goes to him.
I can't go on without you. Please, don't leave me, Robert, please.
Roger is almost hysterical now, and Robert hugs him tightly, kisses him all over his face, then his neck.
I'll stay, darling. I'll stay.
Robert continues to hold him, kiss him, caress his face until Roger calms down, kisses him back. As Robert takes his jacket off and tosses it onto the chair, 2 tickets for the Titanic fall to the floor. Camera zooms in on tickets and then cuts to their faces as they kiss passionately. Scene 28, interior, Roger's dining room, day, April 15th, 1912. Robert and Roger are drinking coffee when the newspaper arrives. And at the same time, the phone rings. As Roger answers the phone, Robert takes in the front page of the paper with the headline, J.J. Astor lost on Titanic, 1,200 to 1,500 dead.
Hello? Yes? Oh, yes, he's here.
Robert, in disbelief, picks up the phone. It is his father.
Yes, Father, I've only just now read the news. I'm so lucky. I have a friend that was here in need, so I stayed a little bit longer. Yes, thank you, Father, thank you. I will find passage home as soon as possible. You saved my life.
Roger says nothing, is also in shock over the tragedy. Robert begins crying. This time Roger is the one to go to him to comfort him, to lead him to the chaise lounge, where they simply hold each other and weep. In the morning, Roger wakes up alone and finds a note from Robert on his piano.
Roger, you gave me life. You saved my life. I crave your love and I offer you my endless friendship and love. But I must return to my family, and I could not bear to look into your eyes for fear I could never leave your side. Please forgive me for leaving, and please visit, please. Yours always, Robert.
Roger takes a pen, writes, "I would have gone with you." On it, seals the paper in an envelope, holds it for a bit, looks at the door, rips it in half and tosses it in the trash, lets out an excruciating cry. Scene 29, interior, Allerton Library, 1914. Samuel Allerton reclines on a sofa and Agnes pours tea. Robert is pacing the room. His sister Katie is sitting beside him, holding his hand.
Katie, Agnes, I'd like a moment with my son, please.
Of course, Father.
She and Agnes walk out of the library and close the door.
Son, I want you to know something. I want you to know I love you more than anything in this earth. I would give my life for you, unflinchingly. Somehow you received the best parts of me and your mother, and Agnes raised you with such love as if you were her own. Son, people are going to say things about you. I know they already have, and some of those things may be true and some of them may not be. But none of it can hurt you if you know yourself. If you know who you are and you know that you are living with truth and dignity and kindness, that is all that matters. Let them talk. I've been called a name or two of my life, and it didn't stop me. It made me stronger. I want you to be the best, the strongest you can be. Remember that. Those asses who call you names, they're making you stronger, more resilient.
Robert is crying and has to look away. Sam begins to cry too.
And there's nothing wrong with crying, son. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Crying means you care, and there's nothing sadder in this world than apathy.
Father, you know Michelangelo?
Of course.
Before I left for Europe, you said Michelangelo's father never told him to stick with masonry. But in fact, his father did not encourage him in art. He thought artists were not high enough in society.
Michelangelo's father was wrong.
Michelangelo's father was an ass. I'm so lucky to have you as my father. I thank God every morning for you and Mother and Katie, and I thank my lucky stars every night.
That makes two of us, thanking God for the family we got. Family is everything, son. I hope you have a family of your own one day, a son who will make you proud. But even if you don't, Robert, if that's not the way your life goes, this is what I know. You will always be surrounded by love, because that's what you give. I see how you treat your friends, and I see how you support them in their work, in their dreams. No one can make a dream come true on their own. You gotta have friends who help you along, who remind you not to give up. And you do that for your friends. I see that. And the world is good to people like you, people who help others. God will be good to you.
Robert hugs his father, crying.
Robert, this city is getting rougher and dirtier. God only knows what's happening in Europe. I fear war may be inevitable. I want you to be safe. If things get bad here, you go down to Monticello. You stay there. You take care of yourself and keep your head down. You stay safe. You understand?
Yes, Father.
I'm an old man now. I used to like to fight and swear and got into some mighty tough scrapes, but now I see how lucky I was I didn't get killed in one of them scrapes. The world needs you, Robert. You stay safe and you don't listen to any of the cruelty that people are capable of.
Yes, Father.
They embrace again, fade out to the sound of church bells chiming funeral toll, and then black screen which fades to a gray sky, and then birds silhouetted against it over the U of I football field as we transition to the next scene. Scene 30, exterior, football game at U of I, autumn of 1922. Robert now has gray around his temples. Robert's friend Will has convinced him to come to a football game at his alma mater, the University of Illinois in Champaign. Robert has arrived, cannot find his friend, and sits rather awkwardly in the bleachers by himself, looking at his watch, then off in the distance, anywhere but the game.
Robert! Robert!
Robert doesn't hear him.
Robert, there you are.
Yes, here I am.
Paul, Will, their sons, and John clamber up the bleachers to him.
Robert, you remember my son, Daniel?
Yes, yes, of course, Daniel. You used to be younger, of course.
Daniel smiles at him.
Robert, this is my friend Paul, his son Patrick. And this is the Robert Allerton, the man who has made the art scene in Chicago what it is today.
Well...
Who helped turn Chicago white for our glorious World's Fair when he was merely 20 years old. Who has traveled the world and brought back priceless treasures for our citizens to enjoy. And kept a couple for himself, right? Who despises football but came here nonetheless to meet you kids?
Will forgot to mention that I can also stop a speeding train single-handedly with one hand tied behind my back. Nice to meet you all.
So happy to finally meet you, Allerton.
Very nice to meet you, sir.
And this is their friend I told you about, John. John Gregg.
Well, nice to meet you, John Gregg.
They look at each other for a while until Robert catches himself.
Shall we watch the old pigskin get abused now?
All laugh, and the boys take seats beside their fathers with John next to Robert.
Thank you for joining us today. My friends found my orphan state pitiful, but I really am getting along just fine.
I can tell. Well, that is, you seem well adjusted.
But we have only just met.
I have a keen sense of judgment when it comes to people's character. Perhaps 1 in 100 are worth talking to. I learned this from my father.
Very well then. In this case, you are correct. Your father taught you well. I am quite wonderful, for an orphan.
Have you any family at all, John?
I still have a sister and a brother, and I've gotten the opportunity to attend this school to gain an education I never thought possible for someone like myself. So life goes on, right? My mother used to say to us, the sky's the limit.
My mother's often said that too. I believe we can do anything we want if we set our minds to it.
Just then, everyone in the stands cheers. Robert and John fake cheer, along with them, oblivious to the game.
You want to go?
Please.
Mr. Lodge, I'm terribly sorry, but I just remembered I have a test tomorrow, and Mr. Allerton here offered to help me study for it.
Oh, well, by all means.
John is already standing and climbing down the bleachers with Robert close behind.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Will. I'll see to it that he is prepared for his test.
They rush off. Will and Patrick look at each other.
I think they get along better than you expected.
Patrick and Will chuckle, cut to John, pointing out architecture on the U of I campus. Robert is smiling and listening as the scene fades out. Scene 31. Montage of interior university library. John at a table studying. Robert walks in and has brought a picnic basket. Exterior, John and Robert enjoying a picnic on the U of I campus. Interior, Robert's home at the farms. John doing homework at a table as Robert reads the newspaper and steals glances at him. Interior, Art Institute of Chicago. Robert taking John to the Art Institute for the first time. John and Robert are standing in front of a painting.
This is simply exquisite.
My friend Frederick is better.
You've mentioned this Frederick several times now. Should I be jealous?
Mr. Gregg, I do not believe we have known each other long enough for you to mention the notion of jealousy. Frederick is my childhood chum. You are as a son to me, and I want nothing more than to mentor you and to provide a parental figure in absentia.
As a son?
Yes, as a son.
Okay, as you wish, Father.
Just then, the president of the museum approaches Robert.
Robert, so good to see you, friend. And who might this be?
I'm his son.
This is John. He's lost his parents, Charles. He's an orphan, and since I don't have any children of my own, I'm taking young John under my wing. He's a promising architect. John, meet Charles Hutchison, president of the Art Institute of Chicago.
John and Charles shake hands.
One day you'll be looking at my work on a museum wall.
Oh, you paint?
Yes, I do.
Well, if you like this one, John, I can show you an even better example of Impressionism by someone with whom you may not be familiar, Renoir. Have you heard of him? And I have some fantastic pieces in my private collection.
Charles has steered John to the Renoir as Robert watches them walk away, fuming, then follows after. Scene 32, exterior U of I campus, 1926, John's graduation. Students are listening intently to the final speech.
We value the values of our parents. We will strive to make our families proud of the work we do. We thank you all the mothers and fathers here today who believed in us, who invested in our education. We shall not waste it, and we shall make you proud. Thank you.
Class of 1926 applauds. John looks over to Robert, who has been looking on with pride the entire time. Cut to party on the lawn where graduates and families drink champagne and wine, hug each other, smile and laugh. John and Robert hug, and then Robert presses an envelope into John's hand.
Robert, you've done so much for me already. There was no need.
Just open it.
John opens a check for $1,000. In the memo line, it says simply Europe. John is speechless and stares from the check to Robert several times.
If we're going to Europe?
No, you're going to Europe.
You're not coming with me? I'm sure Jim and Helen can look over the farms until we return.
John, you're young. I want you to see the world, meet people. And if you return and you want to live with me, I would love nothing more. But if you find something or someone else, I want you to take this time to find out what you want.
I know what
Who you want.
I know what I want. I know who I want. You.
I want you to go, John. Please.
As you wish. But I hope you'll change your mind and come with me. This gift is so generous. I don't know how I can ever repay you.
You don't repay gifts, dear John. You repay loans. I want nothing more from you other than the knowledge that you have taken time to learn and see and experience places that I've already gotten to visit. That will make me happy. And I cannot wait to see your photographs and hear your stories.
Scene 33, interior house at the farms. Robert is upstairs yelling for Helen, who is downstairs.
Helen! Helen! Helen!
Helen rushes upstairs.
Mr. Allerton, what is it, sir? Are you all right?
I am most certainly not all right. Where is my digger?
Sir, I told you yesterday that it was being taken for an appraisal.
You did?
I did.
Are you certain you did? Because I have an impeccable memory, Helen.
I'm quite aware of that, Mr. Allerton, and I'm quite certain I told you.
Well, in all our years together, I've yet to catch you in a mistake, Helen. I'm terribly sorry.
No worries, sir. In all our years together, I have never heard you bellow from one floor to another, sir.
Was I bellowing?
Charles runs up to the doorway just then.
You most certainly were bellowing. I came in from the garden because I thought something was wrong.
Charles sees nothing is wrong, shakes his head, and walks away, muttering about lonely bachelors.
It seems the bellowing, pacing, and late-night whiskeys have been more prevalent since Mr. Gregg has been gone in Europe.
Oh, has it been more prevalent?
Yes, sir. I understand you are quite attached to him.
What do you mean by that, Helen?
Robert Allerton, you can try to fool your friends in Chicago, but you're not going to fool me. You trust me to manage your estate and your hundreds of thousands of dollars, but you don't trust me as a friend?
I'm so sorry, dear Helen. Of course I trust you. Of course I do. And you are correct as always. I didn't realize just how attached I'd become.
Mr. Allerton, you are a good man, and I know that Mr. Gregg sees that. I know he is having a wonderful time in Europe, but in the end, there's nothing like family. You've given him a home, family, and I know he cherishes that.
Robert looks uncertain, and Helen shakes her head and laughs.
I don't think I've ever seen you so flustered, Mr. Allerton. I hope Mr. Gregg returns soon.
She gives him a quick pat on the back and exits. Montage. John using the pen he received from Robert to write postcards from Venice, Rome, Paris, Greece, Vienna. Robert smiling and turning them over in his hands, holds one to his heart. John flying over the Atlantic, looking out the plane window, holding the pen that Robert gave him, smiling. Robert at airport, John running into his arms. They can hardly resist kissing each other and instead hug just a little too long. People around them are starting to stare. Some whisper. Robert breaks the hug and grabs one of John's bags and loudly says, "Got all your bags, son?" And the two walk out the door, stifling a laugh and looking at each other knowingly. Scene 34. Exterior. Ho-Ho nightclub, Chicago, fall 1926. Robert and John stand outside the Ho-Ho club.
To celebrate your return to the United States, there's a place I've been wanting to take you here in Chicago, my dear.
He opens the front door to the Ho-Ho nightclub and they step into the coat room area, which is a bit loud from the music in the club. John and Robert give the attendant their coats and Robert opens the inner door for him. John takes in the dazzling lights, sparkling set, and amazing music. He sees more beautiful men and drinks than ever before in his life. And the beautiful men are kissing, holding hands and laughing together. John is amazed and turns to Robert with a shocked smile.
Nirvana?
Welcome to the Ho-Ho Club.
Robert laughs as the owner greets them, gives them kisses on the cheek, and leads them to their table.
Mr. Allerton, so good to see you again. It's been too long.
I didn't want to overwhelm my friend.
What, us overwhelmed?
Just then, Tipsy, Tootsie, and Saucy take the stage in gigantic feathered costumes, the tips of which brush up against John and his front row seat to the show.
2 whiskey sours, please.
The owner walks away and John and Robert sit back to enjoy the show. Cut to Tipsy and the girls all sitting on or around Robert and John. Hours later, the entire table is stacked full of empty cups and the crowd has thinned out a bit. As John looks from queen to queen, he has a somewhat shocked and dazed look on his face, and we enter their conversation already in progress.
Oh, honey, you're telling me you never saw a queen before?
I can't say that I have. I mean, I grew up in Wisconsin.
You mean to tell me that you didn't have queens in Wisconsin? That state even has the word sin right in it, honey.
I never...
Sin? Sure. And my tits are real too.
No, I never met a queen before.
Well, I'm glad you came out, baby. We got to get back to work, though.
As they stand up, Robert peels off a $100 bill for each one of them, who are each shocked.
It's been a while.
All the queens kiss Robert on the cheek, except Tipsy, who gives him a big kiss on the lips.
Oh, don't be jealous, honey.
Then she kisses John also. The queens walk off, and as soon as they are backstage, we hear a collective squeal of delight as the small fortune that Robert Allerton tipped them.
Folks, for our last song tonight, we have a new face here at Ho Ho. I heard her sing in church, no joke, and I begged her to come here and try some jazz out. So please be nice to her and give a warm round of applause for Theodora Milton.
The crowd applauds and Thea begins singing. Robert is mesmerized by her, but John is tired and wants to leave.
I've had a wonderful time, but I'm falling asleep in my drink. I think I'm still on Italian time. I must sleep.
Cut to the exterior of the Ho Ho Club, and Robert and John come out the front door smiling and laughing. They have both been drinking, but John is especially drunk. Officer Timmons is standing outside the show. As soon as Robert sees him, he takes John's elbow and tries to steer him back inside.
Robert, I'm tired. I want to go home.
John, there's a policeman.
Oh, that's wonderful. Hello, officer. Thank you for your service to our fine city.
He pulls a stray boa feather from his shoulder. John reaches out to shake Officer Timmons' hand, but he will not shake it.
Well, that's fine. Very well, be on your way, you monumental brute.
John!
What did you say?
That's fine. Very well, be on your way, you monumental brute. Or something like that.
Are you threatening me?
No, not at all, officer. Not at all. Good night.
Robert steers John down the sidewalk, but John pats the officer playfully on the back as he passes. The officer spins around, grabs John by the collar, and starts to choke him. Robert maintains his composure.
Unhand my friend at once.
Your friend! A real man doesn't need a pansy-ass friend like this.
Unhand my friend or your badge will be useless tomorrow morning. One call.
Officer Timmons laughs.
Sir, my name is Robert Allerton, son of Samuel Allerton.
Officer Timmons' face goes white, and he immediately relaxes his grasp on John.
If you ever lay a hand on my friend again, I will make certain you never wear a badge in this town or any town in America again. Do I make myself clear?
Yeah.
Good evening, Officer Timmons.
Robert and John walk away.
You may think that your father owns this town, Allerton, and you're untouchable. That's not true. I'm not afraid of you or your daddy.
Scene 35, interior condo on corner of Astor and Goethe.
Condomorium? Condogerium? What's this called again?
Condominium.
Oh, and how is this condomorium different than an apartment?
It's nicer.
How?
Well, you know, fancier, bigger, more windows.
Well, what's the difference between a fancy apartment and a condo?
Because the architect said, behold, the condominium. That's why.
Conundrum?
Yes, we are going to be living in a conundrum. Oh, wait, we already do. Condominium. Condominium.
Condolibrium?
You are incorrigible.
But that's why you love me.
Robert opens the front door with a key, and John steps into the beautiful condo, is in awe.
This condominium is amazing.
Oh, now you can say it.
Well, it's still too long of a word. I'm going to call it a condo. Welcome to our condo.
I
like the sound of that. Our condo.
Robert pulls John into a warm embrace, and they kiss passionately. 36, interior, Ho Ho nightclub in Chicago. Robert and Greg watch a beautiful cabaret number, and then the evening grows more raucous. Monty is at the club also in the background with no interaction with Robert other than staring at him. As the couple laughs together in a crowd of merriment, the camera closes in on the phone ringing behind the bar and the owner answering the phone. We watch her face as he mouths thanks and quickly hangs up. The owner crosses immediately to Robert and John's table and whispers in Robert's ear. John understands that they must go, and they stand up. The police are already at the door. and the owner is motioning the band to quit playing to get out of the building. The owner motions to Robert and John to follow him to a back door, and they rush out the doors. The cops burst through the door, and with the first blow of the whistle, all action moves to slow motion, set to cabaret music. Cops roughly start grabbing the men in the club and handcuffing them.
You can't do this. You can't arrest us.
This is America.
Get your hands off me. We haven't broken any laws. You can't do this.
Want to make a bet in that, sister?
Tipsy was on stage when the cops came and ran out the door just after Robert and John. However, Officer Timmons catches her before she can take off down the alley and struggles with her as she tries to get away.
Why must we be singled out? I have done more for the common good of this city than any of these people who see this as sin.
John consoles him and the driver takes off, but just as they do, they see Officer Timmons hitting Tipsy, who is lying on the ground, beaten and bloody. Robert and John know they cannot stop to help or they will suffer the same fate. As the car travels down the alley, Robert looks back and locks eyes with Tipsy and then turns around, buries his head in his hands, and cries. Camera pans back to Tipsy in the club. Other drag queens have come out the back door and they jump on the back of Officer Timmons, spray hairspray in his eyes, and kick and hit him until he's also lying on the ground. They help Tipsy up. Tipsy gives Saucy a nod. Saucy brings out electrical cords to tie Officer Timmons up, and the queens quickly put lipstick on the officer, who is barely conscious. They put a wig on him, and someone with a camera takes a photo. A loud pop from the flash of the camera sizzles through the night air. They hear other cops coming, and they all run in different directions. Two officers burst out the door and look in both directions at the queens in the distance, and then realize their officer is lying in front of them in a wig and lipstick. One of them starts to laugh, and Officer O'Malley gives him a look. So the cop gets serious, but then cannot contain himself and starts laughing harder.
Get back in there. If you can't show the man the respect he deserves, get back in there.
The cop turns and goes into the club, trying to quell his laughter. O'Malley kneels next to Officer Timmons, takes the wig off. We hear peals of laughter from inside the club as the cop tells the others what happened to Timmons.
Sir.
I'm gonna get them. Every last one of them. Freaks. Pansies. I'm going to get them.
Scene 37. Interior, Potter Palmer House, Chicago. Party at the Potter Palmer House. Mrs. Palmer leads Robert by the elbow to the parlor and John follows.
Now, Robert, who is this devilishly handsome young man you have with you?
Robert opens his mouth, but John's too quick.
I'm his son.
Mrs. Palmer's eyes widen at this delicious scandal.
Why, Robert, I had no idea. Had you any idea?
Well, I didn't actually know his mother.
They laugh again while Mrs. Palmer literally clutches her pearls.
Never fear, my dear. I am but a sad orphan, and this good man has been kind enough to act as my father. He's even been known to give me a good spanking and tongue lashing. And may I ask your name, lovely lady?
John, this is Mrs. Palmer, our host for the evening.
Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Palmer.
John kisses her hand and she is delighted. Robert then sees Monty, who has been staring at him from across the room. Monty excuses himself from his conversation and guides his wife to join John, Robert, and Mrs. Palmer.
Robert, old pal, you look well.
He pulls Robert into an embrace while Robert tries to shake his hand, resulting in an awkward moment.
Robert, this is my wife, Sarah.
Sarah holds out her hand and Robert kisses it.
Pleased to meet you, my dear.
You as well.
And Monty, this is my son, John.
Monty chokes on his drink.
Son? I didn't know, I hadn't heard you have a son.
Well, it's fairly recent. Dear John was orphaned at a young age, and I've taken him under my wing, as it were. John, Monty, and I both attended classes at the Art Institute years ago.
I see. I didn't think you'd fallen prey to any womanly wiles at such a young age.
Monty, please, show some decorum. It was very nice to meet you, Robert, John. Miss Palmer, would you mind showing me your Rodin? I've been dying to see it.
But of course, Robert, John.
She and Sarah walk away, and when Monty does not follow immediately, Sarah turns over her shoulder.
Monty.
Yes, coming, dear. John, pleased to have met you. Robert, I'm so happy you found a son, and I wish you many happy days together.
Monty follows Sarah. Robert's gaze follows Monty, and John looks quickly back and forth between Monty and Robert.
Who is that?
That was Monty.
Robert, you know what I mean. What is your history? There's clearly history.
Our history is that we took art classes together. Now, I just caught the sight of William Boeing, and I want to hear more about this new company of his, United Aircraft and Transport Corporation. He plans to make flight available to the public on a wide scale. Isn't that divine? I've been dying to take you to Europe, so why don't you give me another drink, son?
As you wish, Father dearest.
John walks to the bar, muttering, and Robert walks down a hallway. Monty is walking alone toward him.
I need to speak with you, Robert, privately.
He pulls him into the library of the house, closes door, becomes a different man, manic and fearful.
I cannot pretend anymore, Robert. I cannot. I am living a lie. I care for my wife, but I do not love her. You know I'm not capable of that. I love her and I hate her. And I'm an awful, awful man. I think she knows, Robert. She has to know. Maybe she has always known. Please, Robert, what should I do?
Robert looks sadly at Monty, does not have an answer.
Robert, help me, please. I'm lost. I've been lost so long, so long. I've never forgotten our time together. I never forgot you. I still love you, Robert. We could go away together.
Robert starts shaking his head, no.
We could, Robert. I know you have a place down by Champagne. We could live there and be happy. No one would bother us except the scarecrows and the cows. I love you, Robert. Don't you love me?
Robert shakes his head, no. Monty cries harder, breaking down.
I am deeply in love with John. I couldn't do that to him. He depends on me. He is my family now. I'm so sorry, Monty.
Monty shakes as he cries. Robert consoles him, hugs him. Then the door opens, and Sarah stands at the door, sees them, is horrified, and quickly shuts the door. Monty wipes tears from his face, looks at Robert, walks to the door, looks back at Robert.
I meant what I said, Robert.
Monty opens the door and walks out. Robert waits a bit, looks around the room at the art, then walks out, finds John in the crowd.
I've been looking everywhere for you. Your drink.
I'm tired, dear. Let's away.
What happened?
Robert starts walking to the coat room. A black servant brings their coats to them, but they are alone except for her.
Monty and I were very close friends, John. Very close. And Monty just told me that he would like to be very close friends again. And I told him I was far too busy to socialize, that caring for you is all I have room for in my life.
John looks at him in understanding, touches his cheek. The two exit. The servant gives a knowing chuckle after them, knowing their secret. Scene 38, montage of Robert and John traveling in Europe together. With black screen, we hear the sound of a plane taking off and the pilot's voice saying, "Thank you for flying with Pan Am today." And then from the darkness emerges a bright white outline of the Mona Lisa, which slowly forms with detail as we hear John and Robert.
I love it here so much.
I knew you would.
Robert, you must stand in front of this piece by Gauguin. Please stand still. Don't move. Don't move.
The two stand in silence, staring at it, and as a wave of beauty washes over him, Robert begins grinning broadly, turns to John, who grins back at him, both looking at each other, at the Gauguin, back at each other, like kids in the most magical candy store on the planet. Flash to montage scenes. Exterior, Eiffel Tower, kissing in front of the Eiffel Tower. French cafe, Robert feeding John pastries in Paris. Interior, Vienna, Staatsoper, sitting at an opera in Vienna. Interior, Carl Milles Studios, visiting the studio of Swedish artist Carl Milles. As they walk around, they see The Sun Singer nearing completion.
What do you call this one, Carl?
I have no name for it yet. The family, they tell me they want a figure of a boy, and he is supposed to be playful and loving.
Looks like he's singing an aria to the sun itself. He's so happy.
The sun singer.
The sun singer. I like this, Mr. Allerton. I like this. This is called the sun singer.
John, I think a copy of the sun singer would look lovely at the farms, don't you?
Absolutely lovely. But perhaps a smaller version. For this one would stand taller than the house.
Yes, I'm thinking half the size.
Yes, half size.
You want a copy?
Yes, but smaller. We are thinking half the size of this. For what? 5,000, 10,000?
I make for you for 5,000, Mr. Allerton. This is a wonderful price for sun singer. I make copy for you.
Smaller copy, yes?
Yes, smaller. Okay. Smaller sun singer.
He gestures toward the penis of the statue, but neither John or Robert notice. All smile, nod in agreement, drink a glass of wine and a toast. Scene 39, interior, house at the farms. Robert and John walk in the door with suitcases in hand, James following with remainder of boxes of artwork. He keeps bringing boxes and rolled up canvases inside and depositing them inside the door on a neat pile. After John and Robert have put their bags down, Helen comes out of the library to greet them, kisses both on the cheeks.
How was your trip?
John despised every minute of it, right?
Helen, we simply must take you along. I know you would love it. The food? Oh, the people, the art, the parks, the opera. It was the best time of my life.
I'm so glad to hear it. Sir, a telegram arrived for you yesterday.
Thank you, Helen. What is it?
I didn't read it, sir.
Robert looks at Helen with disbelief because she has been responsible for opening all business mail for many months. She looks away from him.
I'm sorry, sir. It's just, I didn't want to be the one to tell you.
Robert opens the paper and sees, from Tipsy Perez, Sweet Monty gone. Took his life. Funeral, Friday, 10 a.m. Robert lays his head on his desk and begins sobbing. Helen starts to lay a hand on his back.
Please go. Go.
Helen nods, quickly leaves. John goes to console him.
Go. I said go.
I didn't. Very well.
John exits. Robert cries alone. Later that night, Robert is still sitting in the same spot, but the shadows are long and supper is being served. John appears in doorway. He quietly enters, walks to Robert, lays his hand on his back.
Who was it, Robert? Helen didn't know.
Robert hands the telegram to John, who reads it and reacts with shock.
I want to go, but I cannot. I should not.
I'm so sorry, my darling. I know you cared for him.
Is this my fault?
No. No, of course not. He made his own choices. He chose to marry, he chose to live that way. And he chose to die that way.
How many choices do we really have, John? How many choices? To live a lie, or live our truth and live in fear? I should have encouraged him more. I should have talked to him, John. I should have talked to him.
You probably should have.
Robert looks at him, surprised.
You could have talked to him, and maybe the events would have turned out differently. Or perhaps not. We can never know. But I know that you did not kill him. You did not pull that trigger. You did not tie the noose. People like Officer Timmons killed him. People who called him names, who called us names. They killed him. People who act like ostriches and stick their heads in the sand and pretend we don't exist. They killed him, Robert. Not you.
Robert doesn't say anything. John pours them both drinks and holds the glasses up for a toast.
To Monty, who died too soon. To all the other Monties of the world, may we all strive to be kinder to them.
To Monty.
The two clink glasses and drinks together. Scene 40, exterior gazebo at the farm. John and Robert are lying on the ground, staring at the clouds together.
The human mind is amazing. We want to see things that aren't there. We look in the clouds and we see shapes, images. We see a leaf on the tree and we imagine it could be an animal running. We see an empty canvas and we think, fill it, fill it, fill it.
We see a beautiful mouth and we say, kiss it, kiss it, kiss it.
John kisses Robert and the two continue kissing on the blanket. From behind the tree line, we see a pair of eyes staring at them in anger and disgust. Just then, a large flatbed truck rumbles down the lane, kicking up dust, and John and Robert sit up, walk toward the house. As the cloud of dust settles, we see the outline of the Sun Singer, lying flat on the truck, tethered with many strong ropes. John and Robert are baffled. The driver and his helper have gotten out of the truck, and the driver has a delivery clipboard.
You Mr. Robert Allerton?
Yes.
I got your statue here.
I see.
The statue was loaded on by a team of 10. We're hoping you have some farmhands who can help unload it. Otherwise, I have to call back to Chicago for help, and that's going to cost you extra.
A team of 10? This statue is supposed to be no taller than you or I.
I'd say it's about 9 times as tall as either of us, sir.
I see.
It's amazing.
But it shall dwarf the house.
It's a monument to our travels and to our art. Let's get to work. I'll get Henry, Charles, and the others.
Soon, half a dozen farmhands, Helen, Robert, John, the driver, and his assistant are holding onto ropes. The truck has been backed up so that the statue is sitting near the house.
Heave!
Oh! They slowly and with great strain pivot the statue onto its base so it is standing next to the house. Exhausted, they wipe their brows. Helen goes into the house to get lemonade for all and comes back out. She returns to the house and then calls for Robert and John, leaning out a second-story window.
Mr. Allerton, Mr. Gregg, could you join me for a moment?
John and Robert walk inside, still sweating, lemonade in hand. They walk up the stairs and into the room where Helen simply gestures to the window. The window has perfectly framed the penis of the Sun Singer statue. John and Robert are shocked and then burst out laughing. Helen joins in, and soon all three are laughing so hard they are crying. Farmhands, driver, and helper come inside to see what they're laughing at, and when they see the perfectly framed penile view, they all join in laughing.
Robert asked for a small...
I asked for a smaller...
Helen and the others are still smiling, but look confused.
When we saw the original sculpture, we asked for a smaller version of it.
But I believe the language barrier got in the way. I asked for a smaller sculpture, but I think he understood that I wanted a smaller...
Smaller Johnson.
He points at it and says...
It is definitely smaller than the original. How could he think we would want smaller?
He starts laughing again. All laugh together, pointing at the penis and making gestures with their hands to show how big it should be. Fade out. Scene 41, exterior, the farms. Montage, John transforms the wild mess of woods around the mansion into an estate resembling those he and Robert have visited in Europe, complete with a sunken garden and a Tibetan-inspired meditation area. He motions to gardeners, carries pots of plants across the grounds and places them carefully and exactly as he envisioned. He makes sketches, holds them out to Robert to review, returns to the drawing board, erasing lines and revising his plans. We see John and Robert travel the world, buying paintings expressly for the intent of donating them to the Art Institute of Chicago. We watch as Robert buys Rodin sculptures, Picassos, and eventually writes a check to pay for an entire new wing of the Art Institute, thus becoming the facility's largest donor. We see them walking along the streets and beaches of Honolulu and then board a small plane with friends who live in Hawaii and fly to Kauai to look at a vacant beachfront estate. They are driven through sugarcane fields and admire the pristine crescent beach of white sand enclosed by high cliffs. The bay is beautiful sapphire blue, and as they admire it,
you could build a house, or you could build us a house, whatever you want, in a garden. We could fill the valley. This will be our paradise.
Robert writes a check for $50,000 and buys 86 acres and one of the most private coves in all Hawaii. We also see John draw up the plans for a lane that ends in a circle and watch as the Sun Singer is moved from the house to its own location in the center of the circle, raised by a team of farmhands and neighbors into its permanent location. Scene 42, exterior, Chicago, Michigan Avenue sidewalk. Robert walks down Michigan Avenue. Monty's wife, Sarah, is walking towards him, and they see each other at the same time, stop and stare at each other briefly. Robert begins walking toward her, and as he opens his mouth to speak, she holds a hand discreetly out to stop him, gives him a withering stare, begins crying, and walks off. Scene 43, exterior Champaign-Urbana train platform. Robert, John, and their driver, Jim, stand on the train platform. In the quiet afternoon, we hear the whistle of an approaching train. The train pulls up, and there are a few moments of silence before the conductor opens the doors. Out spills dozens of partiers from Chicago's arts world, and the air is filled with shouts of "Robert, darling, Bobby baby, oh, John, finally, we've arrived," etc. The driver looks at Robert in astonishment at the volume of people, liquor, and lascivious behavior. Robert shrugs, smiles.
Tipsy, Tipsy, over here.
Darling, that had to be the hottest train ride ever.
Oh, Tipsy, how I have missed you and your delightfully elephantine exaggerations.
Tipsy takes a drink from her flask, offers it to Robert, who instead motions for her to come with him to his car.
Tipsy, Danny, Angie, Wanda, Mary, Lizzie, you all come with me?
The most outlandishly dressed and most drunk of the crowd stagger over to Robert and pile into his car. John and a group of 6 people squeeze into the car he has driven. Great expletives as they all try to squeeze into the various cars.
That's all I can fit. The rest will have to go with you, Jim.
Jim turns and realizes there's still at least 15 people. He has to fit them all in the back of the truck he drove. He says, "Okay then, follow me, folks." Jim drives down a tiny road toward the farms with the pickup full of partiers on the back, and we watch as one almost off, but another grabs her. Jim is sweating the entire way when finally Theodora, sitting in the middle beside him in the truck, touches his leg.
Don't worry, honey. We do this all the time.
She giggles. Jim laughs, and then the other 2 people piled into the pickup truck start laughing too, continue down the road. Exterior, farms, the same day. A jazz trio is playing, and Theodora is singing. As she finishes the song, all applaud and whistle.
Well, I gotta take a break, y'all.
The crowd groans. Dora heads off to Jim, who is holding a fresh drink for her, and they begin chatting.
Tipsy, I miss your shows. Would you perform for us tonight, please?
Honey, he doesn't perform, he pretends.
The crowd quiets as she has loudly called Tipsy he and insulted her.
Christina, you know we love you, and we know you love Tipsy, so can't you just recognize that she is living her life as a woman?
Oh, honey, Tipsy can speak for herself. And Christina can't help it if she can't recognize a beautiful woman when she sees one.
Tipsy stands dramatically, flourishing and spinning in her dress, and begins a fairly drunk impromptu poetry performance.
But really, darling, there is no he, there is no she, there is no Robert, there is no Christina.
Some start giggling.
There is only spirit, and spirit moves through us all when we try to define it, to place a line in it. We become tired like that old drapery in the blue room, or Robert's eyes right now.
A few more giggles and Tipsy becomes serious, speaking quickly and earnestly.
There is no John, there is no Mary, there is no age, there is only a need to surrender. We make up names, but we must give up our names.
Mary bursts out laughing. Robert stands and stares at her.
What is so funny?
Well, dear, you have to admit this is a bit ridiculous. We all know how important a name is, a good name, that is. Are you trying to tell me that Allerton means nothing to you? Would you give up your name?
My family matters to me, and my family is known as Allerton. But Allerton is still simply a name. What matters is what we do with our name, what we do with our lives. It shouldn't matter if your name is Allerton or Smith. For that matter, it shouldn't matter if you're black, white, male, female, or if you prefer the company of men or women. Why can't people just look at each other for who they are and not what they are?
Well, where would the fun be in that?
It's not all about fun, Mary.
Robert, darling, labels exist for a reason. When we name something, when we name someone, it helps us communicate better. It helps us understand each other better.
How exactly does the word faggot help us understand one another better?
All chatter stops as the partygoers turn to look at Mary.
Robert, that's not what I meant. You know that, darling. I would
Well,
never.
that's what I meant. And I am tired of other people sticking their noses in business, in my business, and trying to tell me what I should say and how I should be.
Darling, we were talking about Tipsy.
Yes, we were talking about me. Me. And you interrupted me, Miss Mary. And you know what the penalty for that is.
Tipsy chases Mary, who attempts to run, but Tipsy is twice as tall and scoops her up and tosses her into the pool. Mary splashes around, still fully clothed, and begins laughing while screaming at Tipsy. Other guests quickly jump in the water, some fully clothed, some throwing their clothes off quickly and jumping in naked or half naked. John goes to Robert, takes his hand.
Darling, these are our friends. They're on our side.
Why doesn't it feel that way sometimes?
Because no one is perfect. But I do believe they are trying. They love us as we are, but the rules of language are constantly changing. You know that. Now, why don't you jump in the water with me?
I'm fine, my dear. You go ahead. I think I'll have another gin and tonic and see if Thea will indulge us with a few more songs.
John looks to the pool, sees Theodora halfway underwater, fully clothed, passionately kissing Jim, who is also fully clothed.
I think she is a bit busy at the moment.
John and Robert laugh, and John takes Robert's hand.
Let's get that gin, my love, and sit and watch the Follies.
Robert and John walk to the bar, pour drinks, and watch their friends, eventually joining in and jumping in the pool. Scene 44, exterior, the farm, nights. A car rolls up to the gazebo, and a bunch of young men in dark clothing jump out and knock over one of the foo dogs. They drive down the lane and throw something through the window of the house. Robert and John sleep upstairs. There is a crashing sound from below, like a window being broken. They rush down the stairs and see that a rug has caught fire from a torch being thrown through a window. Robert watches the fire and freezes while John runs to get buckets of water. Robert flashes in his mind back to his paintings, blistering in the fire, looks wild-eyed at the paintings in the room, still frozen as John tosses bucket after bucket of water onto the fire, which quickly spreads to a wooden chair.
Robert! Robert, we need more water! Robert!
Robert shakes his head, snaps back to reality, rushes to the kitchen for more water and comes back. The two of them put the fire out and sit exhausted on the steps outside, where Robert starts tearing up. Just then, Helen runs up.
I thought I smelled smoke. What happened?
Someone tried to burn our home. Arsonists.
He gestures to the charred remains of the torch.
How could anyone?
She looks off in the distance, sad and disgusted at this violent act.
I am so sorry. So sorry. You're both okay?
As okay as we can be.
Helen sees paint on the side of the building.
I will clean that up first thing in the morning.
Neither Robert nor John had seen the words on the side of the house. They both turn to read what has been scrawled on the wall. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to tell you what it says. No surprise. Go back to Chicago, queers. John begins crying too. Scene 45. Interior, Robert's study, the next morning. Robert writes a letter to his sister.
My dear sister Katie, it seems that John and I cannot find safety even here in the midst of the forest and the field. For yesterday night, we awoke to the sound of glass shattering in the distance. It was one of our beautiful dog statues, destroyed. In the time it took us to put on our slippers and walk down the stairs, the vandals had made their way onto our lawn and threw a gift through our window, causing a fire. Never fear, we are all okay, at least bodily. John and I wept in fear and sadness. Where can we go? Where can we live peacefully? I hope all is well with you and your darling family, my sweet sister. I love you very, very much. Your brother, Robert.
Robert sighs, looks out the window at a bird flying. Scene 46, exterior, the farms. Robert and John lie together in the gazebo.
You know how much I love you, John.
You can always tell me again. Wait, what's happening? What are you doing, Robert? Are you sick? Are you leaving me?
No, we're leaving. We're not safe here. We weren't safe in Chicago. We're not safe here. I couldn't bear to think of something happening to you. I couldn't bear to lose you.
Robert begins crying, heaving head in his hands.
But this is our home, my dearest. Look around you, all the work, all the money put into this place. I love it here. You love it here. We can't let some idiotic teenagers take this from us.
Should we let those idiotic teenagers take our lives instead?
But where should we go?
Hawaii.
Hawaii? Really?
We have friends there. People who've been there for years and years, and they say the Hawaiian people are so accepting and friendly, and there are no threats. There's no Officer Timmonses. There's no fire bombs.
Well, we'll come back to Illinois and see our friends and keep the house and the farms.
Of course, whenever you want.
Yeah, how can I say no to Hawaii?
He grabs Robert and kisses him.
We have to keep fleeing, don't we? But one day, Robert, we won't have to flee again.
Scene 48, exterior, Hawaiian house on the ocean. Large numbers fill the screen, 1959. Robert is now 86 years old and John is 60. John and Robert lie in a hammock by their house on the ocean together.
I want us to be family.
We are family.
I want others to know how much I care for you.
And I would like to grow wings and fly in the sky. But that is just as likely as what you are speaking of, Robert. We cannot marry. We cannot even live together officially. We cannot risk your reputation, your father's reputation, your family name.
But I've learned of a way for us to be together, legally. A way to make sure you're taken care of and for others to recognize our relationship.
Really?
I could adopt you.
Adopt me, Robert. I'm a grown man. I'm 60 years old. And though some may call you my sugar daddy, what we have is more than that. Well, at least.
Well, of course, my darling, of course.
You don't think I can take care of myself? I can.
No, I didn't say that, but I'm an old man now, and I want to know that you are going to be taken care of.
John begins to cry, walks down to the beach. He sits and stares at the horizon, birds chirping. After a few moments, Robert joins him, sits beside him, stares at the horizon also. They sit together in silence. Robert takes his hand.
I want to do this for you, John, for us. It will simplify our lives greatly, and it's only on the account of the fact that I care for you so very much. Our lawyer said no one has done this before. We'll have to fly back to Illinois, but it will be legal, and you will be taken care of. And you can be by my side in case I'm off in the hospital or... John, it would make me very happy.
Let's do it. Who am I to stand in the way of something that makes you happy? Who am I to doubt your wisdom? My father.
They both laugh, hug each other tight. John tenderly touches Robert's face.
You know me so well, and you still want me.
Always.
You've given me the world, Robert.
There's still so much for the world to see. And so much, you're so much younger than I am, dearest. I want you to keep living after I'm gone. The sky is the limit for you, my love. The sky is the limit.
Well, I think that new NASA program is breaking that barrier even.
They both laugh, they kiss. The sun sets, spinning panorama of the woods and the fields around them and the limitless sky above. Scene 49, adoption. 1960, interior lawyer's office. Robert and John take turns signing the paperwork and then put the pen down, turn to each other and smile.
Robert, John, I've known you both a long, long time, and I know how much you both care about one another. The law of the land requires me to tell you that you are now legally father and son. But the law of love requires me to declare you husbands, as you already have been. One day, and I believe it can't be long, people will get to marry who they want. It's 1960 after all. But until then, you are legally and formally family.
He places the paperwork in an envelope and reaches across to shake hands with them. Robert and John leave arm in arm and look up at the beautiful sky and sunshine together before taking steps down the stairs.
The sky is the limit, my love.
The end.
Yay! Thank you all so much. Oh, wow. If you guys want to take yourselves off mute, everybody all at once, 5 seconds of wild applause. Yay! Thank you so much.
Woo!
Wow. Thank you all so much. The chat is open now for any questions for myself or the actors. If you have any questions about the process, or if you just want to unmute yourself and ask it, that's fine too. But thank you guys so much. That was so amazing to hear, and wow, I can't even describe it. Did I hear someone ask a question? Or hi, Lisa. I see everybody. The namesake of Professor Schwenk. Let's see. Oh, thank you, John Lindley. Thank you for your comment. Thank
So
you.
do you have a plan, Rachel, for starting a production or getting producers together, or?
I don't really have a plan so much as I just, you know how, like, it's going to sound cheesy, but you put stuff out in the universe. And I thought this was a first step at putting it out into the universe. And I actually have entered a couple contests, Jeremy, and got great feedback, but one for female writers over 40. And I was like, I've got to be a shoo-in for this. You know, but didn't get chosen. So I'm at the point where I'm kind of looking for producers, and I just really want to work with people who the story really resonates with them. So that's kind of where I am, is just at fundraising, I guess. And honestly, you see this great cast. I mean, we could start working on this next week, in my opinion, you know? I mean, if there weren't a deadly virus spreading. But yeah, that's the loose plan. And this was honestly, this just was like a great first step. So I just appreciate you all so much. So yeah, thank you. Oh, thank you for the comments. Thanks, Anna. Brilliant job, Rachel and entire cast and narrator, for bringing this fascinating and important story to life. Thanks, Anna, and Alex for saying, so proud of you. Beautiful story. Thank you for doing this. And a brava from Kaylin. Thank you for coming, Kaylin. So
there are so many of the actors in this that I actually want to like meet now. So, it's interesting working with people that I'm not used to, because I'm used to seeing the same people that I've known the last 5 years. So this is kind of, even if it is just a reading with very little rehearsal, it's kind of neat to work with new people.
Yeah. And
really
I'm lucky because I know you all, and all the awards in this Zoom room right now, all the awards and accolades, if I had to list them, it would take a long time, but there's just amazing talent here and people I really appreciate. Were you going to say something, Adrian, or did you?
Oh, I was just saying that I had a great time, and I'm happy even on the limited platform of Zoom to, get any opportunity to do any kind of reading or acting at all. So thank you for that.
Thank you. One of my former students, along with Jared. Thank you. That made my heart happy too. So I'm so glad you continued with acting. Thank you, guys. My sister Wanda said, I joined late, but it was great. And David said, I don't think I got a link to the script. It's very satisfying to see at this stage. I'd like to read it. I will be sending all of you attendees the very latest draft of the script, which actually has just a few fixes and changes. Oh, there's Tom and Rob. Hi, guys. Good to see your faces. Thank you for reading. And I'm actually, you guys are still on mute. I'm curious. Let me do that. Sorry. Tom and Rob, this was your first time hearing it, And what were your kind of gut reactions of those scenes? Because you felt like they were truthful and honest.
Yeah, I felt, I'd say, well, about a third of the way in, it really started to enthrall me. Before, it seemed a little wordy. It seemed like it could be nipped down a little bit. But then I started just really engaging, and by the end, it was wonderful, and it was great to partake in this.
I think that the feelings that you helped to portray of what the gay men were feeling is a lot of what, you know, a lot of us have felt throughout our life, and, you know, are really true to our own life experiences. Especially, I mean, I grew up just north of Monticello, in a small town, 530 people. So, you know, the story of this man in growing up between Chicago and Indiana, you know, felt really true to life to me. So good job.
Thank you. And I mean, it's definitely dedicated to all my friends who face this kind of persecution, honestly, you know, past and present. So that's who this is for.
I was going to add, it's interesting, especially with the ending, because, you know, I was telling a friend the other day that, you know, I'm 36, and I honestly never thought in my lifetime I'd ever see gay marriage be legal across the board. I just thought it's just not going to happen. And so when it did, you know, I was rather shocked. And to know not only that, but now, you know, my father, who's a Southern Baptist minister, is like, I want to do my son's wedding when he finds his future husband.
Wow.
It means the world to me. So.
Wow. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. That, yeah. And you know, it's funny because I think as someone who grew up kind of thinking, oh, of course I'll get married. And, you know, that's just what you do. You grow up and get married. The fact that people I know and love didn't have that same just assumption, you know, or just knowing that they could, knowing that you could. So it's been important to me to let other people know, hey, this may be something we take for granted. It is something most, you know, people take for granted if they want to enter a hetero marriage. But it's not something people take for granted if you're wanting to marry the person you love and they're the same sex. So same gender. Let's see, any other let's see, I have a comment. Oh, Lori, now that I've heard it a couple times, ideas of where I want to edit the script. You know, what's hard is the beginning is so important to me, because the thing that, and maybe the place to begin is in Munich, but one of the first scenes I ever wrote was about him burning his paintings. And in my research, that is something that very likely happened. Meaning there is a story about it, but the problem with Robert and John is that much of their personal effects were destroyed in a hurricane, or in hurricanes in Hawaii. So a lot of this I had to put together from other people, like, you know, Roger Quilter, and, you know, I've read different autobiographies of that time period. But I really like that scene, and the idea that that's when he gave up his art, because he was studying art, you know, and it's really hard for anyone as an artist to go, damn it, it's either I'm not good at this, and we all kind of know that feeling, I think, or we hear I'm not going to be successful. So that's kind of an important scene for me. So I guess the answer is, Lori, I'm not sure, and I'd love any feedback from you. Like if you have a point where, I know one of you said about a third of the way in, and that might be where the fire is. I just actually would have to go back and look. But yeah, any other thoughts or questions? I know we've kept you here for almost 2.5 hours, so I want to wrap it up soon. Anything, David, Yosha, do you have anything to say? I know you're a filmmaker. Do you have any comments or ideas?
Am I on? Yeah, I am on.
Yeah, you're on.
I do want to read the script. I do feel like there are scenes that have more drama and conflict than others, and I don't think you have to do it absolutely in sequential order. So that was my main thought, that some things could be done first and then gone back.
Flashback, yeah.
Interweave the time. That was my that was my feeling through a lot of it. Because
Okay.
I loved certain scenes, but it felt like I wanted to have more conflict at the beginning.
At the beginning, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Rachel, if I may interject. As I drop my phone. First off, I'm very thankful to be a part of this. Everybody that has been on this call has been is just so talented and so exciting to listen to what they bring to life in your script. And the fact that you worked on this and this is a passion project for you for the last 9 years, I believe you said.
Yeah.
I want to just reiterate how proud I am as a friend of yours. 10 years ago, we met, and the scene that really got to me was the scene when the young lady was misgendered. And I remember us standing outside of Rachel's Cafe having deep discussions about this very thing. And I just want to thank you for enlightening me and giving me a wisdom in this world where a lot of people don't want to have that conversation because it's hard and it's just like they'll never understand. I wouldn't have understood if you didn't give me the time to understand that. And so I just wanted you to know that, and I want everybody to know that, like, Christians and even conservative Christians, we're not a lost cause. Like, we want to be an ally in this fight, and I am so sorry of what that group has hurt and has done. But through friendship and through encouragement and through patience, like, we come around. We'll come around, and I'm one of those people. So, sorry, I'm going to get off my soapbox.
No, that's beautiful.
And
Thank you, Alex.
I wanted to just ask. I can't find the place where to donate. Is there a future for Kickstarter? Is there a future for is there an Instagram page? Is there a Facebook page? Is there a website that we can start following to see what you're doing?
I love you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you so much. And I think it was really important. I'm just proud of you for sharing that, because I agree with you that no one's a lost cause. And I've been talking to a lot of people about that recently because of the climate we're in, about whether people are lost causes, and I just don't believe it. I have a page. It's called Allerton the Movie on Facebook, and I own the URL allertonthemovie.com, but one of us just it's actually very hard for me to build websites. So I can do it, I'm just not great at it. So that's actually a stumbling block. And if we get some funding, I can hire someone to do it, which would probably be the smarter thing to do. But yeah, I think a Kickstarter is a great idea. I hadn't gone there yet because I kind of didn't feel like, to be honest, I was waiting for a big, somehow I would get connected. This is a true story, by the way. I thought I would get the script into people's hands, like George Takei. So I met George Takei briefly at South by Southwest years ago, and the script was not in this, it was much shorter, but it was pretty much done. And I literally stalked him backstage and tried to hand my script to him, and he was surrounded by his husband and other people. But I was because actually George Takei was friends with the Allertons. So he actually went to their estate and hung out and partied. So they were friends with a lot of celebrities and obviously wealthy people. And I was just I think you'd like this. And his husband took it and said, thanks, thank you, I'll get this to him. I'm sure he didn't. I'm sure it probably went, but I had this hope that maybe somehow this will end up in someone's, someone's who feels the same kind of excitement and passion. So I kind of had to put that aside after, I guess, just trying my random things, and that now I'm kind of looking at doing it as an independent film. So now that I am more serious about doing it as an independent film and hearing all of you, I feel confident we could make this movie here in the Midwest, and I could, we could do this, and it could be a great production, So yeah, and if we do, all of you are in. So. Well, if you guys have more questions or comments or ideas, please, my email is just rachelhimsel@gmail.com. I think you guys all have that. And we're all connected on Facebook, but I want to thank you again. And how about 2 seconds of applause if you guys all want to take yourselves off mute and give ourselves a big round of applause, including our audience members. Thank you, audience members. And a little bit of shaking. Thank you, guys. Have a great Sunday. Love
Thank you, Rachel.